Have you ever found yourself just waiting for that spark of motivation to finally hit before you start a big project, or head to the gym, or just tackle that thing you've been putting off? You know, most of us have this idea that the feeling has to come before the action. But what if that's completely backwards? In this explainer, we're going to flip that idea on its head and show you how to start literally anything by working with your brain, not against it.
We've all been there, right? The task is sitting right in front of you, but you wait. You tell yourself this little story. I'll do it when I feel ready, when I'm motivated. But more often than not, that magical wave of motivation just never arrives. And instead, you find yourself scrolling on your phone or suddenly organizing your desk, anything but the main thing. You're just stuck.
But here's what's so fascinating. That feeling of being stuck, it's not a personal failure. It's not a character flaw. It's actually a biological feature. It's called psychological inertia. And it's basically your brain's ancient energy-saving software running in the background. See, your brain evolved to conserve fuel, to survive. And in the modern world, that same survival mechanism can often leave us feeling totally paralyzed.
And this is where we get the whole thing backwards. We've been taught to believe the sequence goes like this. You feel motivated, and then you take action. But what neuroscience is showing us again and again is that the reality is the exact opposite. Action is what creates motivation. And that simple shift in understanding, well, it changes everything, because it's based on how our brains are actually built.
So, to really understand why this works, we need to look at the actual science of what it takes to start something. And it all boils down to a concept that's borrowed from both physics and psychology: activation energy. I want you to think of any task as this giant, heavy boulder sitting at the top of a hill. Now, the hardest part is in keeping it rolling once it's going, right? It's that first massive push to overcome inertia and get it moving in the first place. Your brain does a very similar calculation. Starting a task literally burns more fuel in your prefrontal cortex, so your brain's default setting is to resist that initial effort.
This idea is perfectly captured by the work of researcher Dr. Timothy Pychyl. He's found that procrastination isn't really about laziness at all. It's an emotional regulation strategy. The discomfort we think we're going to feel when we do the task is almost always way worse than the discomfort we actually feel doing it. That resistance to starting, that's the real enemy here.
Okay, so if getting started is the hardest part, what is actually happening in our brain once we finally give that boulder a push? Well, the answer is in our neurochemistry. It's all about the brain's own reward system. So here's how the loop works. The moment you take even a tiny little action, a small region deep in your midbrain called the VTA releases a little bit of dopamine. Now, we often think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but it's much more accurate to call it the motivation chemical. It's the molecule of more. It's what drives your desire to continue. So action triggers the reward, and that reward fuels more action. You don't need motivation to start. You need to start to create motivation.
And get this process isn't just happening in your head. It turns out your physical body is an active player in creating your mental state. There's this fascinating principle called embodied cognition, and it shows that it's not a one-way street from mind to body. Your posture, your breathing, your physical state, they are constantly sending signals back to your brain that literally shape your thoughts and emotions.
I mean, just look at this cascade of events. The simple act of sitting or standing upright opens up your diaphragm. This lets you breathe more deeply, which activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your body's built-in calm-down switch. Research even shows it can shift your hormone levels, increasing testosterone while lowering the stress hormone cortisol. We're talking about measurable changes to your brain's entire state, all within minutes. Let's make this really practical. Meet Sarah. She's 23, she's ambitious, she's got all these great goals, but she's completely stuck. The goals feel so huge that the activation energy just feels impossible to overcome. She wants to exercise more, write, get better sleep, but day after day, inertia just wins. So here's how Sarah applies the 2-minute rule. Instead of the goal being go to the gym for an hour, the new goal is just put on gym clothes. Instead of publish a blog post, it's write just 3 sentences. You see what's happening? Each micro-action is so small, so non-threatening, that its activation energy is below her brain's resistance level. She does it, gets that little hit of dopamine, and often that's enough to make the next step feel possible.
Now, this isn't just for starting big new projects. Let's look at a completely different scenario. This is Marcus. He's 38, and his brain is just constantly overloaded. He's not paralyzed by one big task, he's drowning in 1,000 little ones. Work, family, decisions. For him, the problem is cognitive fatigue.
So for Marcus, the 2-minute rule looks different. It becomes a series of tiny resets sprinkled throughout his day. These aren't about adding more to his to-do list. They're about managing his brain's energy. He can even align them with his body's natural 90-minute focus cycles, using them to lower his stress, clear his head, and just make it easier to switch gears.
Okay, so what does one of these 2-minute resets actually look like? Well, here is a simple, evidence-based toolkit that you can use pretty much anywhere to hit the reset button on your nervous system in less than 2 minutes.
It's really this simple. Step 1. Change your posture. Sit up straight, pull your shoulders back. That sends a signal of safety to your brain. Step 2. Breathe. Take 5 or 6 slow, deep breaths. This directly activates your body's calming system. And then step 3. This is a really fascinating one that involves just your eyes.
It's a technique called bilateral stimulation. By simply moving your eyes slowly from side to side, you are gently forcing the left and right hemispheres of your brain to communicate. Research from therapies like EMDR has shown that this simple action can quiet down activity in the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, and bring your prefrontal cortex, your rational mind, back online. Think of it like an emergency brake for an overwhelmed brain.
Now, these resets are incredibly powerful for putting out fires in the moment, but the real magic, the real impact, happens over the long term. This is about more than just a quick fix. It's about physically changing the structure of your brain through what's known as neuroplasticity.
So how long does that take? Well, some well-known research suggests that on average, it takes about 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. Now, that's not a magic number. It's different for everyone and every habit. But it illustrates the key point. It's the small, consistent actions that rewire your brain, not some heroic one-time effort.
And when you practice that consistency, really profound changes start to happen. Your entire nervous system can recalibrate to a lower baseline of stress. Your thinking gets clearer. But maybe the most important change of all happens to your identity. You subtly stop seeing yourself as the person who wants to do things, and you just become the person who does them.
Ultimately, that's what this all comes down to. This isn't about willpower or grit or just forcing your way through resistance. It's a smarter, more elegant approach. It's about finally understanding the user manual for your own brain and using its own internal systems, its own neurochemistry, to create the very momentum you've been waiting for.
The next 2 minutes are going to pass by no matter what you do. They can be 2 minutes spent scrolling, or they can be 2 minutes used to send a very clear, very powerful signal to your brain that it's time to move forward. You have the understanding now. The agency is all yours. How will you use them?